Hi everyone, Thomas Hyman here, and I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to spend with me. I went to a convention this week and watched a keynote address that had some really good points in it, and I actually posted about that in one of our other groups. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over some of the things that to me personally are just so exciting, and also share some of my personal background and experience and how I have gone through this process, and then finally what lies ahead for us. Exciting things are happening right now with Realty Partners, and I'm going to get back to that at the end of this short video presentation. But the keynote that I saw dealt with the quote-unquote Uberization of industries, and how that really is the number one fear of many executives. And it was a story about the future and the inability of people to really understand the future and understand what is happening right now, because it's happening so rapidly. The presentation, the title Uberization, was based on this book, A CEO's Greatest Fear by Jenna McGregor, and it's been out a few years now. And top executive, are scared of being Uberized. How in a company like Uber, ride sharing or other sharing type of business models like Airbnb, for example, how they're really taking over industries and decimating existing industries. How companies like Amazon are really reshaping the landscape, and how that is going to affect their industry. And we obviously have to ask ourselves that too within the real estate industry. How is that going to affect us long term, and be prepared? And my background again is technology, and that's where I'm coming from. And I'm always future pacing and thinking about how this could look like 5 years down the road. And we really have to start to get to grips with time compression. Things that used to take 10 years are now happening in days, literally. And here's an interesting chart that talks about how fast change is happening. Just think about these things and let them sink in for a while. The top 10 jobs in 2010 did not exist in 2004 because the technology and the business models did not exist. 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will no longer exist 20 years from now. And 90% of the makeup is going to be totally gone. GE just this week was kicked off the Dow average, which is only 30 companies. But I'm talking about the Fortune 500. 40% of those companies that are there right now, the 500 biggest companies, will not be in existence anymore in 20 years. And literally 90% of the companies that will be on the Fortune 500 20 years from now are not in existence yet today. And so you have, Netflix displacing Blockbuster. So talking about time compression though, take a look at how long it took to reach 15 million viewers or 15 million users. For the telephone, once the telephone was invented and really took off, it took 75 years until 50 million people had a phone. 75 years, almost a century. Radio took 38 years. So you can see things, the adaptation speeding up. So once the radio was invented and rolled out, it only took 38 years until 500 people had a radio. And arguably the radio is probably more expensive than the phone. TV only took 18 years. So again, doubling, or cutting in half, I should say, or doubling the speed. The internet, when the internet was rolled out, and I was, a child of the early days of the internet, it took only 4 years to reach 50 million users. Facebook, it took 3.5 years as a private company. And when you look at games, Angry Birds, it only took 35 days to get to 50 million users. And I'm pointing this out because one of our goals as a company is to be one of the top 3 companies in our industry within the next 8 years. And on one hand, that's a very aggressive goal, but on the other hand, understand the dynamics that are happening here. 8 years from now, we're either going to be one of the top 3 companies, or we're going to be just a tiny, tiny company, at which point I have no interest in that really. I mean, that's not what I'm spending my time and energy on. Or we'll be a mid-sized company and end up being, absorbed by someone else. But can we be one of the top 3 companies in the next 7, 8 years? The answer is absolutely yes. And we're beginning already right now to build momentum towards that. And we are creating something that has never been done before in our industry, that is really reaching out to people and addressing some stressors that they have. Now, myself, like I said, I come from a technology background, and I built businesses that have grown very, very rapidly before. And the first thing to understand, and this is true for you for your real estate practice, if you want to go from 10 transactions to 50 to 100 to 500 to 1,000. And it's also true for us as an organization. If you want to go from 60 to 100 to 500 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000, the thinking that gets us to 100 is not getting us to 1,000, and what gets us to 1,000 is not going to get us to 10,000. So to get to 10,000 or get to 100,000, we need to have a totally radically different way of thinking and looking at things. And that means making massive changes. So what works for the company when we had 20 agents doesn't work when we get to 100, and it doesn't work for us when we get to 1,000 or to 10,000 or to 100,000. And obviously it doesn't make sense to implement some of those things that we will need to have to be able to have 100,000 or 10,000 right now today, but gradually there will be changes. And some of those changes are internally, some of these changes are externally. And right now we are making massive changes within the company to help us scale. We're growing the corporate team very, very rapidly. We are focusing on systems, tools. For example, our recent shift from back agent to .loop falls into that category. And there will be other changes in the way we're doing business. And I just want you to be aware of that is something that has to happen in order for us to get to the scale that we want to get to. And I'm telling you right now, we must, absolutely must, get to at least 25, 50,000 people, agents over the next 6, 7, 8 years if we're going to be relevant in this industry, because this industry is going to change dramatically, and size will give us leverage and will give us velocity and will give us the ability to do things that we just cannot do as a small company with just a couple of hundred people. So let me share a couple of things with myself that I've gone through, because I've gone through starting a technology company at a time, and this is a photo of me, it's time-stamped in 1994, when very few people had a computer. Nobody outside of research universities or maybe the military knew what the internet was. And I got started literally out of my home building my first technology company. And initially we had 3 team members, me, myself, and I. And I started very, very humbly, and then slowly grew it into a little bigger office. I had a 2-bedroom apartment that had turned into an office before moving into our larger office in downtown Tampa. But I literally ended up having 5 people working out of this apartment, and we worked around the clock. And here you see my mantra on the wall: I can, I will, I believe. I've always been a believer in affirmations and personal development. And from there, we got to a point where it was just tiny, tiny, tiny. The company was called Global Entrepreneurs Network, and we later changed the name to Gen, G-E-N, and our website was gen.com. And it was very, very small and was growing, like, 1 new customer would come every 5, 6 days. Then we got 1 new customer every couple of days. Then we got 1 customer a day. And I always remember the day where things just went haywire and took off, where you see the closet door on the right-hand side. I had a fax machine in that closet. And back then, people had to send their application to sign up with us via fax. So we emailed it to them. and they had, probably a Prodigy or CompuServe or America Online Email. They printed it out and they had to fill it out and fax it back to us so we could then process their payment and take the information and set it up and get them set up on our online services, because there was no such thing as a website, a secure website where you could have purchased something with a credit card. And one evening, my coworkers and I came back, and literally we had 3 feet tall, rolled up. It was a fax machine with cutter, the old terminal paper that would roll up. It ran out of paper, and we just got hit, and it just unleashed from there. And we just went from 1 a day to 10 a day to 30 a day to 50 a day, and it just kept on growing. And just a couple of years later, we were in a partnership with America Online and Microsoft. We had offices in Australia and Germany, and obviously here in the United States. And if you are familiar with technology, you know about CeBIT. CeBIT is the world's largest electronics and computer expo in the world. It's in Hanover, Germany every year, and it's like Comdex on steroids. Comdex is the tiny, tiny local convention compared to that. And so we had for several years a presence there. And so this is where we were launching our e-business CD-ROM at the CeBIT convention, and had a very big presence. I mean, this was a freestanding, large booth, and we probably had about, I would say at that point, 25,000 customers in Germany, which was one of our biggest markets. And so these were the early days of the Internet of e-commerce, and I've sort of seen what it takes and what happens when you take something that grows, and what goes wrong and what you need to be ready for. And so, right now we are here at a new juncture with our company, Realty Partners, and this is going to be our rebranding that we're going to use in tandem with the convention. And with Realty Partners, we're starting to get a taste of the same thing. With Jen, we used also a networking program. We called it the partnership marketing. It was not a binary plan. It was a regular traditional network marketing type of plan. But it was very, very explosive with a very difficult product back then. Again, in the mid-90s, very few people knew what the internet was or how to get online. I mean, you think it's difficult for you to get your stuff set up. Back then, to get online and get on the internet was an act of God. I mean, you needed to download or install from your floppy disk back then all sorts of different programs, one program to connect to the internet, another program for your email, another program for your newsreader. And the list went on in order to start doing quote-unquote business on the internet. So, and yet we still started to build that momentum, and we're starting to get a taste of that right now. So within Realty Partners, to just give you an idea, right now we're at, we have a couple of applications that haven't been processed yet, so we're just under 60, like 56, 57 agents that are on our system. And a year ago, we only had 12, 13. Our growth initially has been very, very slow, 1 a month, 2 a month, 1 every other month. And it started to pick up. A couple of months ago, we started to see, 1 a week. And then it went to a couple a week. And when it started to pick up this past week, we had 6 signups. And it's going to continue to grow because we're now seeing some momentum. I'm no longer the only one driving the growth. It's other agents, other leaders stepping up and driving the growth. And so we're going to see something similar happen with Realty Partners. And Realty Partners 3 months from now is not going to be the same thing that we have right now. Realty Partners a year from now is absolutely not going to be anything like we have right now, in terms of the systems, the processes, the organization that we need to have in place to sustain that growth. So on Monday, we have a wonderful person starting, Jo. She's our marketing coordinator and very, very experienced social media marketer that has worked for in the real estate industry and for a real estate news organization. And she's fluent in Spanish. We're in the process of recruiting a business development person that we need to have in place before we get to the expo. We're launching in Orlando a little bit more than a week from now. We are getting ready for the expo in August, and the end of July, we have a full-page ad hitting in the Florida Realtor magazine, and we're going to see what the result is with that. If we have a great result, we may continue to run it down the road. It's obviously a significant investment, but so a lot of exciting things are happening, and the bottom line is that this all will benefit all of you. Right now the company is profitable, which is exciting, and that allows us to grow in baby steps, because we're not going to be a company with a burn rate or where we're losing money. We're going to be a company that is profitable and growing profitably. But everything that's happening, whether you're an associate or a junior partner or a partner like Rick, or a senior partner — we don't have a senior partner yet — you get to benefit from that. The more successful the company is, the more successful everyone else is. I had a chance meeting with the agency manager for a large title insurance underwriter, Fidelity, and he's already scouting for potential small agencies that we could acquire to bring title online towards the end of the year. And that's probably the strategy we're going to use. Instead of starting an agency from scratch, we're going to acquire one. And so, yeah, exciting things are happening, and you are in for a hell of a ride. You're here at a perfect time. Now, if you are interested in recruiting and growing the business, oh my God, you are going to see incredible results because of all the activity that's going on. Just the convention alone, where we have 8 agents that have made an investment through the co-op to finance a big chunk of that, that's going to have ripple effects. That's literally going to affect every single person in the company. And so thank you for your vision and your faith in Realty Partners and what we're doing, and myself. And I hope you have an amazing weekend, or what's left of it. It's Saturday afternoon now. And I look forward to hopefully chatting with many of you on Monday morning at our team meeting. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.